Let's see, I was a game engineer at Atari for a number of years, and I did E.T. and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Yar's Revenge, my favorite. And it's been many years since Atari, and thankfully the statute of limitations has run out by now. So I felt now was a good time for me to actually start to tell the story of Atari. I always felt that the story of Atari was never really told. I saw media about Atari, but it's always kind of fluff pieces and market pieces, but nobody ever went inside Atari and told the true story of what went on at Atari. And nobody really knew what was going on inside Atari. And there was some wild stuff going on at Atari. And I just thought it was time to tell that story. And, you know, I became a video producer recently, and I thought, here's a good piece. The real story, as far as I knew it, was that management had called up my boss and said, we need a game in 6 weeks. And George Kish, who was the director at the time, and he laughed. He laughed at them. He says, you know, we can do a game maybe in 5 or 4 months. But you don't do a game in 6 weeks. And they said, well, we've got 6 weeks to do E.T. We need someone to do it. And I don't know who else they talked to, but they called me up and said, can you do it? And I said, yeah, if we reach the right deal, because I knew I could do a game in 6 weeks if I designed a game to be done in 6 weeks. So I did the game, and I set it up so the approval was contingent on Spielberg. It was up to Spielberg to approve the game, because I wanted to get Spielberg up to visit more times. And that was always fun. And I did the game, and I just worked like all the time. You know, I lived in my office, or sometimes I had a system at my home. I had them put a system in my home so I could work there too. And just all the time for like 6 weeks, I worked on the game. And then the game went out, and it was an okay game. You know, it was not the greatest game, but it was a pretty good game, I think, for working on it for 6 weeks. And we had a meeting in the department when they announced Howard's going to do E.T. in 6 weeks. And everybody's going, oh, you know, and everybody started talking about, oh, well, that's going to be a big royalty thing, and that's going to get a lot of hype and stuff like this, and people are mumbling. And so I just stood up and I said, anybody else who would like to do this game in 6 weeks, raise your hand. I said, I will let you do the game. I said, I don't have to do this game. I said, if you want to do this game, go ahead. Who would like to do E.T.? Nobody raised their hand. So I said, okay, I'll do E.T. And I just did it. And I just, you know, killed myself doing it. And so at first that was real exciting, I thought. And I was thinking, yeah, this is going to get some hype. This is going to pay off. And then it got out, and people were very disappointed with the game. People were very unhappy with the game. Although I will say that it was still a million seller. But they printed 4 million, and it only sold 1 million. And so they really took a bath to some extent on it. But also, the rights they negotiated, they paid $22 million for E.T. You can't pay that much for the rights to a video game. That's what you expect to make on the video game. So I don't know if they wanted it to be a loss leader, which it certainly worked in that regard. But I did what I could for the game, and it came out, and people just jumped on it. Oh, what a crappy game. And I have a copy of New Media Magazine, okay, which I hate to say on a next-gen CD, but I have a copy from many years ago, and I have it. There's an article in it, and it's on page 27, and it goes, E.T., the game many cite as the sole reason for the, you know, destruction of the video game industry. And, you know, so around, and I put that up at my cube at work now, and everywhere I go around work, you know, people go, oh, this is Howard. He's the guy who single-handedly toppled a billion-dollar industry. You know, I say, yep, that's me. And people who were there, I mean, the people who did the best at Atari were the people who were there because they loved making games. They were into games. They loved this technical challenge, which was a unique technical challenge. But they loved it, and they had to do it. It wasn't people who just thought, well, this is what I could do, and this is my job. These were people who had to be there. You needed to be there, and they were there 24 hours a day. And it's like, look at this, look what I did, and, you know, you should try this, and you should do this. And there was a lot of sharing. It was a very energetic, dynamic environment. Very exciting place to be. And we could do anything we wanted to do. I mean, the great thing about it, because we're doing the games and we are defining gaming. I mean, you know, we were defining what gaming was at that time. Nobody knew what gaming was. People just knew there was this gaming capability, and they knew there was Space Invaders, and they knew there was basically combat. And then, you know, Asteroids came out, which was the new redefinition of gaming. And early on, that was it. That was the total paradigm of gaming. Before Pac-Man came out, there was the vertical drop-down shoot-'em-up game, and then there was the free-form, lots of things floating around the screen shoot-'em-up game, and then there was the 2 personalized interactive player video game where you just kill the other guy. And that was gaming, essentially, at that point. So there was a lot of room to develop, and we did, and we were making, and everything you did was new, which was exciting, and a lot of what we did really sucked, because, just because you do something that's new doesn't make it cool. But we were all there working on it, trying to figure out, well, what is the gameplay? What's a new thing to do? Because a lot of people weren't. And then things started to separate. Okay, you got the people who would innovate and the people who would knock off. And in the coin-op market, it's all knockoff now, kind of, it's kind of frustrating. But then you can see the two things. Someone would do a new game, and then you'd have a string of rip-offs of it. Then someone would do a new game, and you'd have a string of rip-offs of it. Space Invaders came out, all the Space Invaders games came out. Asteroids came out, all the Asteroids games came out. Then Pac-Man came out, a new revolution. All these new maze games came out, and it was... but we were trying to do the new games. We were trying to come up with the new thing. And that was really exciting. It was really fun to be a part of that. And it's just, wow, Atari was the place where you got to do that. And what an opportunity and what a charge. Of course, you can tell it doesn't affect me very much. But it was just what a wonderful place to be. Atari gave people the opportunity to really explore their creative sides and their technical sides simultaneously. It gave them the opportunity to take on challenges that you just don't get anywhere else, and you don't get anymore. It was a very special time. I'll tell you another thing that's interesting about that period of Atari. Everybody looks at Atari as the people who developed games and made all this entertainment and brought technotainment out into the environment and stuff. But I'll tell you what Atari really did. Atari, more than any other company in history, put computers in people's homes. At a time when IBM and Apple and people like that who were just producing home computers, and Atari was producing home computers too, but people weren't buying them as home computers by and large. But the idea was to get computers in people's homes. It was a new thing back then. By the late 70s, there weren't many computers in people's homes. It was still people why do I need a computer? Why would I want to have a computer in my house? What? I don't want the robot taking over the refrigerator and cooking the wrong food for dinner. That would be very irritating. And so there was still some computer phobia. And when IBM was reaching 40,000 or 50,000, Apple's reaching 20 or 25,000 computer penetration, Atari put 5 million computers in people's homes because those games were computers. And they even started to be used as computers. They were computer carts. So the thing that's really significant to me historically about Atari was that Atari, people would never suspect it, but Atari was the single first point of penetration of computers into the home. And games went on to be the major selling point for a lot of PCs. People talk spreadsheets and doing taxes and checkbooks, but they got that computer so they could play better games, at home. And so that's the significance of Atari in American society and history, I think.